Have you ever wondered why some people walk through life without a single brand on them, and yet seem more confident than those covered head to toe in logos? Why there are individuals who don't need an embroidered label to feel like somebody, while others feel like they're falling apart if they're not wearing the right symbol on their chest? Maybe the question makes you uncomfortable. Maybe it pierces you like a needle, because deep down you know there's something there, something you haven't wanted to look at head on. That branded clothing isn't just expensive fabric, it's an emotional crutch. And the one who doesn't need it, the one who lives completely free of that modern amulet, usually has an inner strength that dismantles anyone who depends on external approval. But hold on a second. Imagine this. You're surrounded by people competing to stand out, people clinging to borrowed shine to light up their own shadow. And suddenly someone shows up who doesn't play that game, someone who wears what they want without worrying about what people will say, someone who doesn't crawl after logos as if identity were in a metallic thread sewn onto a t-shirt. That person walks into a place without noise, without ostentation, and still commands the room. Why? Because they aren't trying to prove anything. Because their worth doesn't depend on a seal, or a brand, or a price. Because their confidence can't be bought. And that, believe me, unsettles. It even scares. Because when you see someone like that, an idea starts to burn inside you. What if I could also live without that dependence? What if my entire search for validation has been a trap? I'm going to tell you without softening anything. There are people who don't wear branded clothes because their identity is not for sale. Because they don't need to dress up as status. Because they don't feel that silent anxiety that forces you to impress the crowd. While some wrap themselves in labels to avoid facing who they really are, others live light, raw, authentic, and free. That freedom drives those who depend on others' judgment to despair, because it reveals a brutal truth. If you need to prove your worth through a logo, it's because you haven't yet found your own. And no one wants to admit it. No one wants to accept that that sweatshirt with a famous name in giant letters isn't a symbol of power, but armor made to protect a brittle self-esteem. What's curious is that those who don't wear brands aren't trying to draw attention, but they do. They don't try to stand out, yet they stand out. They don't seek recognition, yet they awaken a mix of respect and suspicion. Why? Because they're an anomaly in a world built on insecurity. They're a crack in the system. They're living proof that you can exist without following the social script, without letting yourself be hypnotized by artificial shine. And that anomaly makes people nervous. It throws them off. It stirs a deep fear, the fear of realizing they've spent years trying to fill a void with things that mean nothing. Maybe you're wondering what's special about those people, what goes through their heads, where that calm that's so hard to imitate comes from. Relax. You're going to find out. But first, let me throw you another uncomfortable question, one of those that stays stuck in your chest. How much of what you're wearing is a choice? And how much is fear? Fear of not fitting in, fear of not standing out, fear of not being enough, fear of being looked at as if you had no value. Because in the end, branded clothing isn't just a symbol, it's a statement. Please look at me and accept me. In contrast, the one who doesn't need it is saying something completely different. I don't need your approval to exist. And when someone says that without words, they become uncontrollably magnetic. But don't worry, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to take you along a path most never travel. I'm here so you can understand why those people operate differently, what's in their psychology, what allows them to breathe without anxiety while the rest of the world is drowning trying to be seen. And I promise you something with all the clarity in the world. If you stay until the end, You're going to discover exactly why those people don't need branded clothes, how they build their identity without depending on external validation, and above all, how you can start doing it too. Because yes, there's a pattern, there's a mental structure, there's a deep root behind all of this, and I'm going to reveal it to you. Here, today, no detours, no masks, no logos. And now listen to this carefully, because what's coming isn't a continuation. It's a deeper descent into a place almost no one wants to enter. You've already understood that those who don't wear branded clothes aren't seeking validation. But there's something darker, more intimate, more revealing. Their relationship with silence. Yes, silence. That mental space where there are no outside opinions, where there are no comparisons, where there are no gazes dictating your worth. A place most people avoid because that's where you hear the truths that hurt. Most people need noise to feel safe. Visual noise, social noise, emotional noise. And brands are precisely noise. A bright, strident noise designed to fill voids you don't want to acknowledge. But those who don't wear branded clothes are comfortable in silence. They don't need a label to speak for them because they already listen to themselves. And that's the real difference. They're not afraid to be alone with what they truly are. They don't need adornment to tolerate their own presence. Silence is a weapon only the brave know how to wield. Because in it, identity is molded without influences, without pressure, without social makeup. And that's why those who have learned to live without brands usually handle silence like their own territory. While others try to fill it desperately, they inhabit it naturally. That inner calm allows them to walk through any space without needing to justify themselves. And although they don't say it, that serenity clashes with the world. It clashes with those who depend on noise to feel important. It clashes with those who live seeking external proof that they're worth something. Notice something. When someone is full of noise, they fear silence will strip them. But the one who's at peace with what he is has nothing to hide. That's why their clothing is usually simple, straightforward, without symbols. It's not a posture, it's not rebellion, it's not disdain for money. It's emotional stability, it's inner harmony. It's the silent expression of someone who isn't trapped by collective opinion. And that stability provokes a curious effect. When they're present, the atmosphere changes. People lower their voices, the pace slows, energies settle. Not because they want to dominate, but because they don't compete. There's another nuance even more interesting. Those who don't need branded clothes usually have a much more mature relationship with identity. They know identity isn't a costume you put on. It's a process, a daily construction made of habits, decisions, wounds, learnings. Brands offer pre-cooked identities. Wear this and you'll be modern. Use this and you'll look successful. Wear this and people will think you're somebody. But those who don't depend on that don't seek prefabricated identities. They prefer to build themselves from the inside. And in a world where almost everyone chooses the easy path, those who choose the authentic path seem almost like strange creatures. It's not about money, it's not about aesthetics, it's about psychology. Because when your identity is solid, you can afford to be simple. You can get dressed without anxiety. You can exist without ornaments. And that deeply unsettles those who have built their worth on external objects. Because there's something devastating in realizing that someone without logos conveys more presence than someone covered in them. It's like watching your house of cards wobble in front of a stone wall. But this goes even further. Much further. Those who don't seek validation in clothing tend to relate to the world in a completely different way. They don't negotiate their authenticity. They don't change who they are depending on where they are. They don't adjust their essence to fit in. And that's where an unexpected kind of magnetism starts to arise. Because when someone stands firm in their identity, people begin to orbit around them. Not the other way around. The one who doesn't sell himself, who doesn't disguise himself, who doesn't seek approval, becomes a point of reference. And I'll tell you something even more intriguing. These people tend to detect, with almost surgical precision, when someone is trying to impress. They don't judge it, but they see it. They see the insecurity, they see the mask, they see the tension in gestures, the desperate attempt to appear more than one feels one is. And that ability is born precisely from not needing to impress themselves. When you're not fixated on your own image, you can see the true face of others. That's one of the reasons their presence is so disconcerting, because it's as if they read you without effort, as if they see beyond what you show, as if they're not distracted by the wrapping. But there's a secret almost no one mentions. These people tend to have an extremely high emotional threshold. They don't react to judgment. They don't crumble under others' gazes. They don't get rattled if someone comments on their appearance. Because they don't live to please. They live to be. And that difference is so vast that it transforms the way they move through the world. Where others feel fear, they feel lightness. Where others feel pressure, they feel freedom. Where others feel they must prove, they feel they owe nothing. And this freedom has a direct effect on how they build relationships. Because the one who doesn't need to impress finds more sincere friendships, more authentic relationships, deeper connections. The one who doesn't use brands to prop up self-esteem doesn't use them to attract company either. And that immediately filters out people who approach only for appearance, status, or convenience. They eliminate social noise and keep bonds that are clean, real, stable. And in a world where almost everything is appearance, that's an enormous privilege. Observe this. When someone depends on brands, their identity becomes fragile. It depends on external factors, on trends, on opinions, on fashions. But when someone builds from within, when their worth is born in their own emotional core, they become impossible to manipulate. You can't control someone who isn't afraid of losing his image. You can't intimidate someone who doesn't need your approval. You can't compete with someone who isn't playing your game. And maybe that's the most uncomfortable part of all. That these people show us, by their mere existence, that emotional independence is possible. That you don't need to prove anything to have worth. That you can exist without adornments. That you can be someone without symbols. That you can walk through life without a logo defining your identity. And when you realize it, when you see it before you, when you recognize that freedom, a part of you starts to suspect that maybe, just maybe, you could live like that too. They don't say it. They don't show it. They don't declare it. But their simple way of being in the world throws you a silent question. When are you going to stop trying to impress and start to exist? And this is where the truly unsettling part begins. What almost never gets mentioned because it dismantles too many mental comforts. Those people who don't need brands to feel like somebody have a completely different relationship with desire. Yes, desire. That invisible engine that moves almost everyone without them realizing it. While the majority desire recognition, status, attention, validation, they desire something entirely different. They desire mental freedom. And when someone desires freedom more than approval, they stop behaving like the rest of the world. Most people live trapped by desires that aren't their own. Desires installed by advertising, by social media, by trends, by social pressure. Desires that say, buy this and you'll be seen, use this and you'll look important, wear this and they'll respect you. But those who don't need brands desire from within, not from without. They aren't dragged by an implanted desire. They have their own. And that kind of desire is so rare that when you see it, your mind doesn't know where to place it, because it breaks the pattern you've learned your whole life. And here, something fascinating happens. When you're not dominated by the desire to impress, you start moving through the world with a kind of dangerous naturalness. Dangerous because it makes you unpredictable. You don't seek the group's approval, so you don't submit to its rules. You're not controlled by others' opinions, so you don't obey their dictates. That freedom makes others unsure how to treat you. They don't know whether to admire you or fear you. And faced with that doubt, they usually do the same thing: watch you in silence. But there's something even deeper. Those who don't wear branded clothes usually have a totally different vision of human value. While much of society confuses appearance with value, they've learned to see something almost no one sees: inner quality. They look at gestures, not logos. They look at energy, not price. They look at coherence, not the disguise. That's why, without meaning to, they end up building stronger relationships, truer circles, more human connections. They don't choose people for the surface, but for the essence. And that, simple as it may seem, is a skill almost no one masters. Do you know what happens when someone relates from essence? They begin to develop a sharp intuition, an intuition that detects falseness, insecurities in disguise, inflated egos, social masks. That intuition isn't trained with books or courses. It's trained by living without the need to pretend. And that's why these people seem to read the room with an unsettling ease. They seem to know who's authentic and who's acting. Not because they're special, but because they're not distracted by the superficial. And that intuition takes them to another psychological level: emotional self-sufficiency. They don't look for a brand to give them an identity because they already have their own. They don't need a garment to grant them power because they already built theirs internally. They don't wait for people to approve them because they've already approved themselves. That self-sufficiency isn't arrogance, it's maturity. A maturity that beats quietly and is noticeable in every gesture, in every step, in every unspoken word. But there's a nuance we haven't touched yet, and it's crucial. These people don't reject brands out of rebellion. They're not at war with consumption. They're not trying to prove they're different. None of that. What really happens is something simpler and more powerful. Their self-esteem isn't mortgaged. They didn't leave it in the hands of a company, a trend, a logo. They didn't delegate their worth in such a fragile way. And when your self-esteem isn't mortgaged, you don't need to pay installments in the form of expensive clothes, forced appearances, or artificial identities. That kind of independence generates a very curious psychological phenomenon. You become resistant to judgment, almost immune. Not because nothing matters to you, but because nothing sinks you. You've stopped basing your worth on objects that can be bought, so others' judgment has nowhere to take hold. It's like trying to wound someone with a weapon he himself stopped using long ago, a weapon that no longer has any effect. And then something happens that very few understand. These people usually generate a sense of mystery without intending to. Not because they're hiding things, but because they don't display lacks. Most people let their insecurity show in every garment, every gesture, every desperate attempt to be liked. But the one who no longer needs to prove anything seems like a book without cracks, a closed book that doesn't open under external pressure. And that which isn't understood intrigues. That which can't be decoded attracts. That which can't be predicted fascinates. And here comes the most unexpected point of all. These people, unwittingly, become dangerous to others' egos. Dangerous because they show that inner peace is possible. Dangerous because they don't allow themselves to be manipulated. Dangerous because they don't compete. Dangerous because their worth doesn't collapse. And in the presence of someone like that, those who depend on the external feel a void that unsettles them. A silent reminder that they've cemented their identity in something without roots. And maybe that's the true core of it all. That those who don't wear branded clothes don't live free from other people's validation. They live free from the fear of losing it. And that freedom is so deep, so rare, and so valuable that when you see it in someone, you can't forget it. It follows you. It shakes you. It forces you to rethink your own reflection. And this is where everything starts to become even more unsettling. Because what I'm going to tell you now isn't just about self-esteem or validation or inner silence. It goes further, much further. It has to do with psychological memory. And yes, maybe you didn't expect it, but branded clothing also plays with your memory. Not your conscious one, but your unconscious. With that part of you that stores feelings of abandonment, comparison, lack. That part that forces you to seek external symbols to compensate for wounds you never dared to face. Because look at this calmly. The one who needs brands also needs the world to tell him he's doing well, or that he fits in. But the one who doesn't need them has remade his emotional memory. He has rewritten that inner narrative where fear used to live. And that's why these people usually have something almost no one mentions. A completely different relationship with their own past. They don't carry shame, they don't drag guilt, they don't live indebted to others' opinions. Their inner narrative doesn't depend on how they were seen back then. And that's why it doesn't depend on how they're seen today either. This creates a kind of existential lightness. A lightness almost no one understands because most live imprisoned by unresolved memories. Memories that say, prove it, make up for it, be more, don't fail, be worthy. And branded clothing is the perfect shortcut to cover that emotional noise. But the one who has already resolved his inner memory, who has already faced his shadows, who has already forgiven himself, who has already let go of the broken image of the past, stops needing all those external patches. And here, a new psychological phenomenon arises. Narrative autonomy. It means that you decide how you tell your own story. Not the brands, not the trends, not the social group, not fashion. And that's something extremely powerful, because the one who masters his narrative doesn't need fashion to back him up. He doesn't need a logo to validate him. He knows who he is because he himself wrote that identity. And when someone writes their own identity, they stop living inside other people's script. But there's something even deeper. Something that, once you understand it, changes you inside. These people have a different relationship with error. While others hide their failures behind expensive labels, they show them without shame. And that gives them a kind of strength that can't be imitated. Because when error doesn't scare you, judgment doesn't either. And when judgment doesn't rattle you, the world loses its power over you. This healthy relationship with error gives them an almost invisible but tremendously influential quality. Silent authority. That authority isn't imposed with shouts or symbols. It's imposed with presence, with serenity, with coherence. It's the kind of authority that arises when you've conquered yourself. And of Of course, that throws off anyone still trying to conquer themselves through external objects. It throws them off because it's proof that there is another way to live, much more solid, much more stable, much more real. And there's something else that becomes evident when you look closely. Those who don't seek validation in brands tend to move through the world with a different aesthetic. I'm not talking about clothes. I'm talking about mental aesthetics. It's a way of seeing life without adornments, without unnecessary drama, without the constant urgency to prove. They have a way of observing the world that seems sharper, more sincere, more centered. An aesthetic born of their way of thinking, not their way of dressing. And that makes them stand out even when they aren't wearing anything considered striking. And listen to this, because it's one of the most revealing points. These people tend to have an emotional intelligence that isn't contaminated by comparison. Comparison is the root of almost all human insecurities. Comparing yourself forces you to compete. Competing forces you to prove. Proving forces you to disguise yourself. And disguising yourself forces you to buy symbols of identity. But the one who has cut the root of comparison no longer needs to compete. And the one who doesn't compete doesn't need to prove. And the one who doesn't prove doesn't need a disguise. And the one who doesn't need a disguise doesn't need a brand. It all starts there, in not comparing yourself, in not seeking your worth in another, in not measuring your life by others' rules. They no longer enter that cycle. Not because they're superior, but because they stopped playing a game that never gave them anything. And by leaving the game, they gained something no one can buy: inner coherence. And the most fascinating thing of all is this: inner coherence generates a kind of allure that can't be faked. It isn't printed on a t-shirt. It isn't sewn into pants. It isn't bought in a store. It's an allure born from being aligned with yourself, from not betraying yourself to fit in, from not selling yourself to fit in, from not disguising yourself to be liked. It's an allure that's felt, that's noticed, that's recognized, and that transforms how others see you. Because in the end, branded clothing isn't the problem. The problem is what you're trying to cover with it. The problem is the wound, the void, the fear, the doubt, the insecurity. And those who don't need brands don't do it because they're stronger, but because they have nothing left to hide. And here, right here, is where this reflection becomes an uncomfortable mirror. When you see someone like that, someone who lives without disguises, without dependencies, without the need for validation, you start to wonder what would happen if you too let go of that weight. You start to wonder who you'd be without the logo, without the brand, without the noise. And that question doesn't go away. And now that you've come this far, I want you to pay attention to this last stretch. Because what's coming isn't a closure, it's an impact. It's the kind of truth that isn't spoken out loud because it unsettles, because it awakens, because it forces you to rethink things you might prefer to leave untouched. But you're already in. You've already crossed the door. And now it's time to look at what almost no one looks at: the power to choose who you want to be without asking for permission. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. If you look closely, Everything we've talked about leads to something that can't be bought, can't be inherited, can't be flaunted. Something that can only be conquered. The ability to hold yourself up without leaning on anything external. And that is the essence of those who don't need brands. It's not the clothes, it's not the style, it's not the aesthetics, it's freedom. The freedom not to live trapped in others' perceptions. The freedom not to beg for validation. The freedom not to use symbols as emotional crutches. It's the freedom to inhabit yourself enough on the inside that you don't depend on the decorations on the outside. And here comes what's truly profound. When someone lets go of the need to prove, they begin to experience a kind of peace the rest of the world doesn't even know how to name. That peace feels like an emptiness, but a healthy emptiness. An emptiness that no longer needs to be filled with objects, with looks, with approval, with labels. That emptiness isn't lack. That emptiness is space. Space for you. Space to be. Space to exist without disguise. And that's where true strength begins. When you discover you don't need anything to show who you are. But let me tell you something else. Something that might make you uncomfortable or set you free, depending on where you are. The world doesn't reward those who pretend. It rewards those who are. It doesn't reward the one wearing the most expensive brand. It rewards the one who offers the rawest truth. It doesn't reward the one who impresses, but the one who dares to be genuine in a world that lives in disguise. And maybe now you're thinking, so what do I do with all this? How do I apply this to my life? And the answer is this. Start small. Start daring to be you without ornaments. Start questioning where your decisions are coming from. Start listening to yourself a little more and comparing yourself a little less. Start looking at your closet and asking yourself what you would buy if no one were going to see you wearing it. Start inhabiting that silence you've always avoided. Start recognizing the noise you once thought was essential. And when you start doing that, little by little, almost without realizing it, you'll discover a freedom that's been there your whole life waiting for you to touch it. Because here's the final truth. The one who doesn't depend on symbols to feel like somebody never loses their value. The one who doesn't adorn themselves to prove never ends up empty. The one who doesn't need brands has already found themselves. And if you've made it this far, if you've stayed here without veering off, without running away, without closing the video, it's because a part of you was already ready to hear this. A part of you that maybe had been asleep for a while. A part that knows there's something deeper than appearance. And believe me, if that part woke up today, even by a millimeter, that's already a huge step forward. So if this video stirred you, if it opened a mental window, if it made you see yourself even 2 centimeters more clearly, I invite you to subscribe to the channel because what's coming after this isn't superficial. We're going to keep delving into human psychology, into identity, into real value, into that part of you no one taught you how to handle. And I want you to do something else. Leave in the comments a single sentence, just one, which will be our secret key to know who made it this far. Right. My value isn't sewn into my clothes. Whoever reads that will know you're part of the small group that doesn't stay on the surface. And now, yes, I'm going to say goodbye in the only way that makes sense after everything we've just gone through. Don't change your essence to fit in. Change your environment so you can breathe. See you in the next video, where we'll keep tearing off masks until there isn't a single one left that keeps you away from who you really are.